I think this might be Susan's, although she looks like she's got one at Stephen. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the council meeting of the 15th of December 2020. I declare the meeting open at 6:01, and I'd like to start by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome, members of the public gallery, to our meeting. We just have to deal with apologies, of which we have a full house tonight. I think, can I just check that we have Councillor Toppelberg on Zoom? Yes, we do. So we're all pay our respects to all accounted for. Councillor Toppelberg, I've been asked to do a voice check with you. Can you hear us and can we hear you? I
can hear you clearly. Have you got me?
All working. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll go to public question time and receiving of public statements. Noel would like to be first, but before you do start, Noel, I'll just run through for people who may not have been at the meeting. You can come forward. I think most people have been here and know the drill, but just in case, we do just, well, you haven't exactly. No. You're a newcomer and we welcome you. Very brave going first.
That's all right.
We just do ask that you state your name, the suburb that you live in, and the item that you're speaking to, and we do give you 3 minutes, and CEO does time.
So, can I ask a question?
Of course you can, yes.
I understand that it's a question session only.
No, you can make a statement and you can ask questions. Okay. We're very liberal.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Noel Whitehead and I live in North Perth. I'm here to talk to item 10.6 on the agenda, which has an impact on the street that I live in, or that we live in. There are other concerns which I won't go into tonight, and I appreciate the input of the CEO who's afforded the residents of Chelmsford Road another meeting prior to trying to resolve the issue of the Chelmsford Road traffic calming and also the Chelmsford Fitzgerald Street situation. It's fair to say that the residents of that street are extremely unhappy, to say the least, with the result of that process, which has been ongoing for some time. But I'm not here to talk about that because that would certainly supersede the 3 minutes. The question that I'd like to ask in relation to item 10.6 is, it seems to me that the issue of consultation, when the agenda item quite clearly states that the council will consider tonight agreement in principle to an item that obviously has an impact on those streets bordered by Hyde Street, Raglan Road, Fitzgerald Street and Vincent Street. The issue again relates to road safety, and I would like to ask the question about the consultation process that is proposed. I would hope, before I ask the question, that it's not a case of things being slid into to letterboxes. It's not a case of some people not having the facilities or the computers to make submissions. I would like to ask in detail, what is the proposed consultation process? It seems to me that it's being very quickly activated on. I understand very clearly that the funding has come from the state government, and that consultation process, in our view, is vital. The residents of Chelmsford Road, for example, have met, not specifically on this issue, but it was raised. We did not know that it was coming to council until Friday afternoon. But in our situation, to take 2 giveaway signs away and have what I would call, or what we call, a very limited roundabout at the corner of Ethel Street and Chelmsford Road is totally unacceptable. And unless we are able to be convinced that that is conducive to road safety, then we will be opposing that, in effect, that roundabout. I can't speak for any other intersections in the area, but I'd like to ask the question about what is proposed in terms of consultation.
Thank you, Noel. So council members will raise that question when we come to this item. Thank you. Well, you're very welcome to stay, and because you've raised that item, that will be dealt with towards the front of the meeting. Next speaker, please. Come forward, Mari.
My name is Mari Slythe, 89 Carr Street, West Perth, and I wanted to speak on item 10.4/10.5. I'm not sure which. Anyhow, it's the Safe Active Streets, Florence, Strathcona, Golding Streets project. I've already made several submissions to council pointing out my concerns about the hazards which we ratepayer residents living in Carr, Strathcona, Florence Streets will be subject to if this proposed active project, especially the Cycle Boulevard for Strathcona Street, goes ahead in its proposed current format. Please reconsider this before finalising it. A quick example of what I'm talking about is that last Friday, even before Strathcona Street's become a boulevard, coming out of Colvin Lane into Strathcona Street, I was about to turn right and cyclists came racing past me, and I nearly missed him by half an inch, whatever, because I couldn't see him because the shadow of the trees across the road at 2:30 in the afternoon was starting to come across, and there was already cars jammed all the way on the right-hand side going up to Carr Street, so you couldn't see him. So luckily I missed him, but that's just one of the problems I foresee as this progresses if it goes ahead. Having read the minutes of the council meeting, I saw no mention reference to the risk to which vehicle drivers will be subject when exiting Colvin Lane into Strathcona Street. And a similar situation can occur in heavy rain. If all councillors and council staff have not yet come and observed these conditions, it's not possible to see them on paper, then before approving this, I would think in the interest of safety of ratepayers and all who live in Cleaver Precinct area, it will help council to show that it is truly meaning safe, active streets for everyone. I'm greatly concerned that the hazard bus drivers will be confronted with cyclists zipping across Newcastle Street to go down Golding Street will also cause a few disasters. A bus driver was recently confronted in Northbridge and penalised. As mentioned already in the previous submissions, I do feel threatened and not like being placed in a position of coming out of Colvin Lane and possibly hitting a cyclist because of lack of visibility in this part of Strathcona Street. The speed limit of cars reduced to 30k is great, but what about the speed of cyclists who never seem to get judged for any speed at all and really do a couple of humps slow them down, especially humps in Colvin Lane don't. Why should car drivers be placed in such a dangerous position when this is not possible to see in either direction, exiting Colvin Lane and entering Strathcona Street? And often cyclists avoid humps by cycling onto the footpath to dodge the humps. Is anyone going to stop that? I doubt it. So much safety for pedestrians. This is why the project seems to be set up to protect cyclists from outside the area. A few tiny numbers live in the area, but who have no restrictions placed on them at all. But as the safety of everyone living there, what about our safety, especially the car drivers and pedestrians who live there?
Mari, you have reached 3 minutes, so if you could just conclude, that would be great.
Okay, so please listen to the voice of our people. And one alternative, can I just put forward, is reverting, if this doesn't go ahead, which we'd love not to, but I'm not against cyclists either, but use Cleaver Street, which already has a cycle path. It won't have to worry about crossing Newcastle at the bottom because there's traffic lights there. The only lights will have to stop it. They go all the way down to the bottom into Old Aberdeen Street and then onto that way. So thank you.
Thank you, Mari.
Okay.
Next speaker, please. Come forward. Thanks, Geraldine.
Geraldine Box, 129 Alma Road, North Perth. I'm referring to item 10.3, North Perth Precinct Traffic Report. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm back again. The original residents' petition requesting attention to traffic movements in our local streets has now become part of a broader council agenda, being the enhancement of the North Perth Common. Our request for the opportunity to look at developing a low traffic neighbourhood has been lost in this current report. A key part of establishing a low traffic neighbourhood is the use of modal filtering. We've been told this is not favoured by council officers. However, it has recently been used on Chelmsford Street and is proposed in the plan for the View Street at the Common. In the Chelmsford Street case, it received black spot funding. My question to councillors, therefore, is morbidity, mortality and vehicle damage the only criteria used to engage this particular form of traffic management? Surely resident safety, amenity and health are as important, all improved when low traffic neighbourhoods are established. My plea to councillors tonight is to reject the section in this item on the installation of one slow point in each of Leek, Claverton, Alma, Alfonso and Camellia, and wait for the introduction of the 40km/h speed limit across all of Vincent, which I believe is for 2023. And in the meantime, for council officers to consult fully with residents and assess the area described in the petition as one which could become a low traffic neighbourhood. Thanks everyone. Have a great Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. Same to you. Next speaker, please. Come forward.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Manifold. I'm the club captain at University Cricket Club. We've got our home ground at Menzies Park, the home of cricket in Mount Hawthorn. I'm here to speak about agenda item 5.4, which is the proposed signage. Our club president sent an email this afternoon, which outlines the specifics, but we just wanted to make clear for consideration of that agenda item that there's actually no additional signage sort of indicated. We're not looking to add any signage. We're just looking to use the current signage that the football club currently uses. So that's just that. I think that might be a key piece of information for councillors. And obviously we would swap back with the football club, which is the Cardinals, when they take over the pavilion for the commencement of the footy season. So use the rest of my time if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask.
We don't normally take questions, but does anyone have any burning questions for Ben about signage? I think the email today has been very helpful because that was a clarification that we were seeking. So thank you, Ben. Really appreciate that and appreciate you coming in.
All good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a good Christmas.
You too. Next speaker. Yes, come forward.
Thank you, Mayor, elected members. My name is Samantha Thompson. I'm with Taylor Burrell Barnett and I'm here representing the WA Flour Mills Proprietary Limited in relation to item 10.4 and 10.5 in other parts of the agenda on the Safe Active Streets Florence Strathcona to Golding project. Lex Barnett from our office made a deputation last week in relation to this matter, and subsequently we met with officers of the city on site on Monday as suggested to discuss. I have 3 questions. The first is, noting that approximately 15 trees have recently been installed on the eastern verge of Golding Street at reasonably dense intervals, we are concerned that an additional 3 street trees within the road pavement adjacent the new trees may further impact the provision of on-street parking and reduce visibility and therefore reduce cyclists, pedestrian and vehicle safety. We question the need for the additional street tree planting on the basis of the recent new street trees and ask Council to reconsider the installation of an additional 3 trees. If additional street tree planting is required, the western verge is currently devoid of trees and outside of the street pavement and is therefore considered a better alternative. And so we ask Council to consider this as an alternative if additional street trees is required. And we have circulated the imagery of the existing or the new recently planted trees. My second question is that the current plans propose a raised platform adjacent the intersection of Newcastle Street and Golding Street. We understand the purpose of this raised platform is to reduce traffic speed. However, in this location, the raised platform would have little impact on traffic speed when the traffic would have already slowed by the time it reached the raised platform and also entering Golding Street from Newcastle Street. On this basis, we request Council reconsider or consider removing the raised platform from the northern end of Golding Street at its intersection with Newcastle Street, as it serves little purpose. And my third question is that as a result of the site visit with your officers on Monday and the implications of my first two questions, we respectfully request that Council consider modifying the proposed resolution to allow the flexibility for further investigations into the merits of these suggestions to occur without delaying the proposal further. Thank you, and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Samantha. And to you, next speaker, please.
Dudley Meyer, Highgate. I just have a series of questions. Question 1, the procedures for the public question time, which is in the front of the agenda, say that questions will be answered at meetings where practicable. I asked a number of questions at last week's briefing, all of which could have been answered, but which were not. So the question is, why weren't the questions answered? Was it because the answers may have embarrassed the staff or call into question the thoroughness of agenda reports? Question 2, none of the responses to questions I asked at the last council meeting about who took responsibility for certain matters provided any details. There were 4 questions. So the question is, does the CEO take responsibility for the failure to indicate who is responsible for those matters? Does he think that sets a good example for the staff? And is it consistent with the administration's claim of being accountable? Question 3, the answer to my question about section 6 of the 6.6 of the purchasing policy states, the statement in clause 6.6, which might have been interpreted as providing the CEO with unlimited power to award contracts without going to tender, was an existing policy clause. So the question is, does the CEO stick by this answer, or is it another example of an administrative oversight? Question 4, what council workshops have been held since the 1st of September 2020 and what items were presented at each workshop? Question 5, why haven't the council workshop dates for 2021 been published as they were last year? Question 6, can you confirm that between the September 2019 and February 2020, the city paid approximately $52,660 to ES2 Proprietary Limited for what was described as a technical security review for user, systems and network access? Is it fair to assume that as a result of the review, all of the city's IT systems were assessed as being adequately secure from external threats? And when was this determined? Question 7, why have the audit logs suddenly been made confidential? Is it because the previous logs identified delays in addressing 2 serious issues? Is the sudden confidentiality yet another example of reduced transparency and accountability? Question 8, the minutes of the 5th of October 2020 meeting of the Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group states that the working group wouldn't endorse an artist's proposal to have an artwork displayed in Hyde Park and suggested another site that is not of Aboriginal significance be found. So the questions are, does the city have a policy that states that only works by Aboriginal artists may be installed in sites of Aboriginal significance? Did the city establish whether the artist in question identified as Aboriginal before the item was considered by the working group? And should the matters such as this come to council for resolution rather than the working group? Question 9, was it the city that proposed the matter taken by Mr. Lincoln Stewart to the Fair Work Commission remain confidential? Would the city support making the matter public if Mr. Stewart is prepared to make it public himself? If not, why not? And the last question, 10, given that the city proposes to stop collecting commercial waste in 2021, will the city still be including the waste produced by commercial properties when reporting on its commitment to zero waste to landfill by 2028? Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Hanukkah to all of you. Thank you.
I'll just ask the CEO if he wishes to respond to any of the questions asked this evening or to take them on notice.
Through you, Mayor Cole, we'll take most of the questions from Mr. Meyer on notice. Just to note that there's been a previous question about an industrial relations matter, and there is an agreement that is made confidential by both parties.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Council and staff. My name's Andrew Main, Alfonso Street, North Perth. I'd like to first talk about item 10.5, the roundabouts issue. I'm wondering why this location was chosen and whether other locations in the city were considered as options. The proposed location has a high high pedestrian traffic, and this proposal will lead to negative outcomes for this user group. The officer report is contradictory. At one point it says there have been severe crashes in the project area. Later on it says that crashes were at the lower end of the scale. So what's correct? There is also no quantifiable data in the report that indicates how many crashes have actually occurred. There's also no commentary in the officer's report about the impact that this proposal will have on pedestrian and bike riders. I'm a regular bike rider and pedestrian in the area, so although I don't live in the area, I use it very often, as does my family. The report does, however, state that the proposal will maintain the movement of vehicles, which is obviously a common impact of roundabouts, and that's not a positive outcome for pedestrians that need to cross at these intersections. I wonder if the impact on pedestrians and cyclists will be assessed in the case that the trial does go ahead. The proposal is also in conflict with the City of Vincent's accessible city strategy, which has pedestrians at the top of the user hierarchy. This puts them at the bottom. The proposal is also in conflict with the Safe Active Street approach, which doesn't have roundabouts. So as you know, there is a Safe Active Street proposed for Norfolk Street and other streets in the area. So I wonder whether it would be prudent for council to not proceed at this stage with this proposal and combine any thought about introducing this when the consultation for the Safe Active Street takes place. I also wanted to talk about item 10.3 on the North Perth traffic calming. I want to talk specifically about stopping vehicle movements from Fitzgerald onto View Street. Obviously, this will transfer traffic from View Street onto other roads. I would say predominantly Alma Road, which is a local road. So you're moving traffic from a local distributor onto a local road. I wonder if council thinks that's appropriate. I'm also wondering whether the Main Roads Department have a view on whether this is an appropriate thing to do. If you are to proceed with this proposal, I think it would be fair on residents of Alma Road that you put some sort of barrier to prevent shortcut rat runners from using Alma as a shortcut between Fitzgerald and Charles Street. I'd also like to draw attention to the data that's in the report. I've actually gone to the location and counted vehicles turning on 2 occasions in the past few days, Thursday and Monday. And for 15 minutes on both occasions, I saw 15 vehicles turning. So that's 60 vehicles per hour. The report says 45 per hour. So I think you need better data if you're going to make a decision on this matter. So thank you very much, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any further speakers for public question time? Okay, we do have one deputation, so we'll just take, we have a funny order where we have to go to leave requests, which I think next time we review the meeting procedures, we might look at that because it does disrupt public question time. Do we have any leave requests, Mr. CEO?
Through Mayor Cole, no.
Okay, thank you. Over to deputations. Thank you to Ros Harley, who is a member of our Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group.
Sorry, Mayor Cole. So we did receive one.
Sorry, my apologies. We had some questions on notice. Do we have to deal with those first?
Through you, Mayor Cole, we did receive one question. However, that was read out by Samantha Thomas during public question time. And we did receive a statement from Damien Jackson in respect to item 9.3, but we're not reading out statements anymore.
That's been emailed to council members, so we'll take that as read.
Yeah.
Over to you.
I'll do my best to stay within
Sorry?
time.
One request for leave of absence.
There is one request for leave
in
of
the minutes.
absence. Oh, you? Okay. All right.
So through Mayor Cole,
Sorry, we will get to you in a moment.
as per the agenda, there's a request from Councillor Castle for a leave of absence from 9 to 16 February 2021.
My apologies. It's here on the agenda, Councillor Castle. I do apologise. So we have a request for the 9th to the 16th of February 2021. Can I please have a mover and seconder for this request? Move Councillor Loden, seconded Councillor Gonchevsky. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried.
Thank you very much, finally. I'll start my timer now. Hopefully I talk quick enough. My name is Rosalind Harley of Mount Lawley. I wish to make a statement about item 11.5, support for the Uluru Statement from the Heart. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I stand and live, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. I also wish to acknowledge my elders past and present of the Gurang people. I also acknowledge my fellow RAP working group members, some of whom are here tonight and others who I know are watching. I stand as a community member in full support of the resolution before Council tonight, and I'm optimistic of its adoption. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is a roadmap to peace forged by many First Nations people on May 26, 2017, when the Uluru Convention was held in Alice Springs. The delegates adopted a consensus position on meaningful recognition in the Constitution through constitutional reform. They sought a real voice to Parliament to empower Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The changes are in three parts. The constitutional change will enshrine a First Nations voice in the Australian Constitution to empower Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The legislative change will see the establishment of a Makarrata Commission. The Makarrata Commission would supervise a process of agreement making with Australian governments, including local governments. The third part is the establishment of a commission. If Council supports the resolution before it tonight, this also confirms the City's view that a voice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, a treaty and a process of truth-telling about Australia's history and colonisation are critical parts of the reconciliation process. I mentioned last week that I'd heard comments asking why local or even state governments are making these statements and showing this level of support. Local government is where the changes can be embedded through daily lived experiences and where the wellbeing of Aboriginal people can be advanced. It is an opportunity for community leaders such as yourselves to have the discussions when asked why you have supported this motion tonight, which I hope you will do. This is both a hearts and minds journey, and for constitutional reform to be successful, we need as many local communities, neighbourhood by neighbourhood, to vote for change at the ballot box. So too for the state government. It is important that the city communicate their position to the state government to show our support and influence the decision makers within government and parliament more broadly. The City of Vincent will be one of only 3 local councils in WA to take this strong position. The city will, as they have done for a while now, be trailblazers, and I hope that many other local councils in WA and across Australia will follow suit. The work on this has been occurring over decades, and it was done at Uluru because it's so significant and it is a place of dreaming. There's just so many people who've been involved in getting this Uluru Statement from the heart to this point. There are simply too many to name, and I pay my respects for all those who came before this time who did not live to see the changes they fought for. There are many activists, young people and elders, but I wish to place into the public record tonight the work of 2 activists who I've recently had the honour of commencing work with. Professor Megan Davis, a Cobble woman from southeast Queensland and constitutional law expert. In May 2017, Megan read the Uluru Statement into the public realm at a ceremony. She's watching tonight's proceedings with interest and gratitude. Megan is an activist and human rights lawyer and is a driver behind the progress of this statement. I also wish to acknowledge the work of Patricia Anderson, or fondly and respectfully known to many as Auntie Pat. Auntie Pat is an Alua Ware woman from the Northern Territory. She is the quiet diplomat whose influence is immeasurable. She's a human rights advocate and a passionate health administrator. I admire the dedication and persistence of Megan and Auntie Pat and everyone who's worked so hard to progress this issue. I commend the motion to Council tonight, and I thank councillors in advance for your support. And I too wish you all a Merry Christmas, if that's your thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ros. We really appreciate you being here for both weeks and for your comments on the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Okay, we'll move to confirmation of minutes, item 6. This is for the ordinary meeting of the 17th of November 2020. Could I please have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes? Move Councillor Castle, seconded Councillor Loden. All those in favour? I declare the minutes adopted. Announcements by the presiding member. It's been a long year, so I'm going to keep my comments very, very short and just say that as I've moved through the community during the festive season, there's been a lot of talk about the year that's been. A lot of people are feeling quite tired out and really looking forward to a break over Christmas, although I think our local businesses are quite happy to be busy over this time. And I just really want to say enormous thank you to our community for their work, for their persistence and endeavours during this year, particularly to our community volunteers. They have been instrumental in helping us keep our community connected for wellbeing, for rallying like our local cricket club. I think our cricket club captains moved on, but these were absolutely essential to our sense of community. Also to note that our staff have been really diligent in terms of responding this year, in terms of our public health response and rallying the troops in terms of refocusing our priorities and really trying to get that support out to the community. It's been an enormous body of work. And I just want to say thank you, CEO, and thank you, directors, and to all of the team at the City of Vincent for all of the work that's been going on in the background. It has been really quite inspirational to see everyone come to the fore. I think that our response in WA continues to be fantastic. Apparently, we've had 1 million downloads of the Safe WA app and over 7.5 million registrations, showing that our community continues to be diligent in the face of this public health emergency. And whilst we've had a very good run compared to other jurisdictions, I do think that the leadership shown by all levels of government, the response and acceptance and support from the community, coupled with all of the hard work that's gone in behind the scenes, has really led to this fortunate position that we find ourselves in, and long may it continue. So I know that many people are looking forward with hope to 2021, and it's just an opportunity for me to say to Council, you've been phenomenal. Thank you so much for your support and your cohesive approach, and for really sticking with the priorities this year. It's been an incredible opportunity, and I've really enjoyed working with you all. And to the staff again, and to the community, wish you all a very happy festive season, and hope that everybody keeps well and that we all rejoice in the hope that 2021 brings. Thank you. Declarations of interest, CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Cole. There are 4 declarations of interest as noted from the briefing session last week. There's one new declaration of interest of proximity from Councillor Fotakis in relation to item 9.5. The interest being that Councillor Fotakis owns an investment property that falls within the 67 dB contour area of Amendment 41 as shown in attachment H of that report. Councillor Fotakis is not seeking to participate in the debate or remain in the chambers or vote on the matter. The other declarations of interest, 3 from Councillor Sally Smith, items 8.1, an impartiality interest in relation to an item that has been withdrawn from tonight, so it's no longer on the agenda. Item 8.2, impartiality interest in the report and minutes of the Audit Committee held on the 1st of December, noting that Councillor Smith's spouse is a member of the Audit Committee, and in relation to item 10.4, the Leaderville Laneway upgrade, Councillor Smith notes that she works for Dale Alcott Homes, which is an ABN group company, and will be moving to work at the ABN building when it's completed next year. Councillor Toppelberg has declared an interest in relation to item 10.6, urban road safety, noting that his primary residence is located within the proposed trial area. That's all, Mayor Cole.
Thank you very much, CEO. Councillors, just to run through that, there have already been a number of items raised either by members of the public gallery or that are absolute majority decisions required. So in addition to those items already raised, Councillor Hallett, do you wish to raise any further items for debate? Thank you, Councillor Castle, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Fotakis, Councillor Loden, Councillor Smith, Councillor Gonchevsky. I won't forget you, Josh.
9.8, 9.9. 10.4 we're going to do because of a interest, aren't we? So
that's right.
11.3 and 10.2.
10.2? Yep, thank you. Councillor Toppelberg.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Just 9.7, the Parklets amendment. Thank you.
9.7.
Thank you.
Okay, if you just bear with me and the CEO for a moment while we work through whether there are any on-block items remaining. Thank you for your patience. The CEO is just going to go through the on-block items for moving this evening. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Cole, the items being proposed to be moved en bloc include items 9.1, 9.3, 9.6, 10.1, 10.8, 11.2, 11.4, 11.6, 11.7, 11.8, 12.1, 12.2, and 12.5.
Thank you, CEO. Can I please call on a mover and seconder for the on-block items? Move Councillor Fotakis, seconded Councillor Loden. All those in favour? I declare the on-block items carried. Thank you. Okay. We do usually first go to the items raised by members in the public gallery, and we will do that as quickly as possible. But we do actually have the auditor present from the Office of Auditor General here, Mr. Mark Ambrose, who will quickly go to item 1.1, annual report, so that we can deal with that matter, and Mark can continue his evening outside of the council chambers. So thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. Before you speak, I'll just get a mover and seconder for item 11.1, draft annual report 2019-20. Have a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Wallace, seconded by Councillor Fotakis. And before we go to debate, I'll just go over to Mr. Ambrose for any comment.
Thank you, Mayor Cole, and thanks for the invite. In the pack, we have the Independent Auditors Report, and the report for the financial year 1920 is an unqualified report. It includes two emphasis of matter paragraphs, which just highlight contradictions between accounting standards and the local government regulations. And all we do with those standards is that we highlight those to the users of the financial statements. The report also contains the adverse trends of the ratios, and that's we include in the report. And the other items that we've included are material matters of non-compliance. And we've included two areas of material matters of non-compliance relating to access controls and changes to the employee master file. Thank you. So that's just a high level of the audit report. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, no. Okay, I'll go back to the mover. Do you wish to speak to the motion? No. And the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion? No, any debate? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ambrose. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Toppelberg, can you just move your hand as close to the screen as possible because it's sort of disappearing into the blue background. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambrose. We appreciate you attending the council meeting. Okay, that was short and to the point. So we'll move on to item 10.6. Just noting Councillor Toppelberg has a proximity interest and has will not be participating in the debate or voting. So 10.6 is the Urban Road Safety Program Pilot Implementation of Mini Roundabouts. Can I please have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved by Councillor Hallett, seconded by Councillor Gonchevsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple of questions, some which came from the floor. I'm wondering if the director or manager could talk us through what's intended around the consultation.
Cole, I'll take that question. So the intention is to write to all the residents within the area, including absentee landlords. So there will be an EHQ page that people can go to and give their feedback, or alternatively, they can give their feedback in writing.
In the briefing, there was some questions from Andrew about this one, and in the response from administration, it was mentioned that admin had met with the Department of Transport a few times when developing the long-term cycle network, and this had been raised. And the department's position was that their preference was bike priority first, whilst acknowledging making local road networks safer was beneficial for all road users. Can you just maybe comment on some of those discussions and how you've, I guess, weighed up those different needs, which have been alluded to by the public as well?
Through you, Mayor Cole, as you point out, that we had a discussion with them during the discussions on the long-term cycle network. And essentially we talked about, raised the issue of the urban road safety program as well, and got some feedback from them. And we did actually explain that when we get to the consultation stage, we would actually formally consult with the department's cycling team and also with West Cycle. As I put in the report, I mean, their preference is that it would be designed purely for cyclists, but they acknowledge that there is the wider network has more users than purely a single group. So they were probably reserving their judgment until we actually consulted with them. So it was more of a verbal update with the department.
All right. Can I move an amendment now or wait till seconder?
I will go to the seconder first. If Councillor Gonchevsky, do you wish to speak to it before we start dealing with amendments? Yep. Okay, back to you, Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Fellow councillors, on the white in front of you, there's an amendment which was flagged by a member of the public gallery. Just wanting to change number 2 to, instead of saying approves in principle the proposal, change that to approves the proposal for the purpose of public consultation specifically, and for the reason as outlined that I'm not comfortable providing a position on such a thing until we've actually had public feedback, and there's been a series of things that have been fed back to us so far.
I'll just see if we have a seconder. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wallace. Do you wish to make any further statements? No? Councillor Wallace, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I just express my support for the proposal. I think the way the whole recommendation is worded is rather presumptive around the outcomes of the public consultation process, or certainly presumptive about our response to whatever that outcome might be. So yeah, I'm happy to change the wording of item 2.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, I also support this, and thank you for bringing it forward. It was raised at the council briefing last Tuesday about whether in principle support was warranted at this stage prior to public consultation. So thank you, Councillor Hallett, for the amendment. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? The amendment is carried. Back to the substantive. Is there further comments on the substantive motion? I'll go to the seconder and then I'll come to you, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. I believe that there were some questions raised from the gallery in relation to why this particular area was chosen. It's my understanding that this area was chosen on the basis of crash data as potentially being able to be impacted by the installation of these types of intervention. Could I please get confirmation from the manager perhaps that my recollection is correct there?
Through you, Mayor Cole, yes, that was the primary reason. Also because of the typical grid pattern of the North Perth area. It provides an opportunity to put a uniform traffic control in and gives us a direct comparison with some other locations, as in the 40K zone south.
Thank you. Look, I'm very, I have to say that on the face of it, I think this is something that could have a positive impact on the area. And however, one of the reasons we go to consultation is to actually find out from the users of an area about things that you may perhaps not have had at front of mind or that may have an unintended impact or consequence on the community. So whilst I recall seeing the data and also looking at the results of this type of intervention in Melbourne, where there was, I believe, quite a extensive study done on the basis of this sort of intervention that was very positive in terms of road safety. I am absolutely always in favour of going out and consulting with the community so that we can make sure that we're not causing unintended impacts by taking a course of action.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Through you, just a question to the manager. I was just about item 3 within the recommendation where we are approving the pilot project in the Capital Works program subject to commence in March and April 2021. I think it's a little bit presumptive about our responses or the contents of the consultation and our response to it. I was just wondering if you had an opinion on whether that item can or should be removed, just pending the results of public consultation and the secondary report to council.
Through you, Mayor Cole, look, yes, it can be removed. I mean, that was in there because it was an indication of Main Roads needing to acquit this project before June 30. So if we were going to start it, I needed to have a timetable to start to. But obviously, if the public consultation comes out against the proposal and it doesn't proceed, then obviously that's redundant.
Through you, Mayor Cole, I guess I'd just like to move an amendment to just remove that item for the reasons of, I think we can just wait until the public consultation has come back on it.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Castle seconded. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Wallace?
No, thank you.
Councillor Castle?
I've just seconded it because I have a question. In terms of timeframes for the public consultation and the ability to commence this work in March or April if the consultation is in favour, is that about as tight as it can get? I'm just thinking if we do wait, will we miss the time that we need to get there?
Through you, Mayor Cole, the actual treatments are relatively simple to install. So it's an achievable time frame if it comes back positive, yes.
I might just ask a follow-up question. Is the purpose of clause 3 simply to reserve time in the Capital Works program schedule in case the community support this and it needs to go ahead? And if it's removed, what impact would that have on the scheduling?
Through you, Mayor Cole, it's also for budgetary reasons, so we could include it in the mid-year budget review to acknowledge the grant we're going to get from Main Roads to then incorporate it into our Capital Works program.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Gonchevsky?
I'm going to ask this as a question, but is the purpose of the subject the consultation to, do councils make a decision on matters such as this solely based on an opinion poll of residents in relation to in favour, as has been mentioned 3 times here in the way that we've talked about this, or do councils consider a number of different factors when we're making decisions and public consultation is as part of that? So I guess my question is, if public consultation was revealed matters of substance and a community sentiment, et cetera,
Councillor Gronchewski, it's not a briefing, you can speak freely.
No, I've already spoken.
Oh, you've already spoken.
So I'm
yes,
asking
of
this the
course.
question. I guess I just, I want to ask a question just to clarify that the purpose
We're
of
dealing with an
public
amendment,
consultation-
so you're allowed to speak.
Oh, speaking on the amendment, thank you. I guess, no, I'm not supportive of this amendment simply because I think that ultimately Main Roads is looking at a potential site. They're looking to seek councils that may consider this sort of intervention. I believe that there is sufficient merit in this intervention at this stage. And I also believe that whilst public consultation is part of the factor that would be considered in a decision on this, if public consultation was line ball or there was no matters of substance or that were revealed through public consultation, that we may proceed. I just think it's really important when we talk about things that we don't give people the idea that that this is a vote in the public on this matter. There are a number of factors to be considered, and I think it's not unreasonable to say, subject to the public consultation being undertaken, that we would improve the inclusion of this pilot project in this particular instance. Particularly because we've approved for the project for the purpose of public consultation. I think that the wording of the amended 2 is sufficient to indicate that we're approving for the purpose of consultation and that we would approve this for the inclusion subject to that consultation. So I don't support this amendment. There's more to this decision than simply the consultation outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Gronchewski. Are there any further comments? I asked a question, so I can still speak, but I would just say that I think it is important for council and the city to be able to forecast works and to have that scheduled and to have funding set aside in the event that it goes ahead. And I see this as the purpose, so I'm happy to keep clause 3 as is. Are there any further comments? Okay, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Councillor Wallace in favour. All those against? The rest against. I declare it lost. We're back to the substantive. Are there any further comments or questions on this item? Okay, I'll put, yes, Councillor Loden.
Sorry, ma'am. Look, I'm happy to support this to go out for consultation, but primarily because of the issues around crashes that you're seeing and the potential for this to resolve this, but I am concerned about cyclists in this context as well. It was brought to the STAG for discussion and there was concerns raised at that level as well of how cyclists are going to get through these things. So I think it's important that we have that in front of our mind as we, assuming this goes forward, that we have that in front of our mind, how we're going to facilitate cyclists getting through there. The issue is that with the mini roundabout, you create less space in that junction. And so it then actually makes it more difficult for cyclists to get through. And we look at our hierarchy, cycling sits above vehicle users, but I can accept that the crash issue is one that we also need to deal with as well in this context. So I'm supportive, but I am warily supportive, I guess would be what I would say.
Warily supportive, not wearily because it's December the 15th. Okay, any further comments? Councillor Fotakis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have to ask on point number 6, do we need to place a date in there by which that report comes back to council?
Yeah,
Manager, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, thank you. The intention would be that we'll start the consultation process after the blackout period in the new year. We would try to get a report back by March.
Okay, so unless there are any further comments or questions, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We can let Councillor Toppelberg know he's welcome back. Welcome back, Councillor Toppelberg. The next item raised by a member of the public gallery is item 10.5, which is Safe Active Streets Florence Strathcona Golding project. Could I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved Councillor Loden, seconded Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand the reasons for why administration has put this recommendation forward. This is the obvious street for us to be putting a cycle route through. It connects up with Beatty Park and provides that north-south linkage that we require in the city to facilitate cyclists getting through there. And providing the speed bumps is a mechanism to slow that traffic. My concern here is that I think this is going to provide more of an impediment to cyclists as well. I confess that I am a lycra-clad warrior on the weekend and go out and do battle with cars on the road. But I'm also a commuter with 2 kids strapped to the back of my bike, which makes me on the other end of the spectrum there as a cyclist, where I'm very nervous and cautious about where I ride. And with both those hats on, I don't really see this as a useful path for me to get through. I'll still find that I'm in conflict with cars on the road, and I've got this impediment of a speed bump in my way. I look to the other safe active streets that we've done in the city of Vincent, particularly down thank you very much. Had a moment there, Shakespeare Street, which utilised the sort of almost one car at a time traffic narrowing to slow the traffic down. I recognise that causes a problem because it removes parking bays in that area, but I think that is the best way for us to manage this, to make this a safe street. It will push cars onto alternative roads in that area as a result, because they won't want to navigate through there. It provides the opportunity for us to plant trees in line with our greening plan. And it also, there was another point, which I've now forgotten. But so at this point in time, I am not supportive of the officer recommendation and would be supportive of an alternative recommendation. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. I have, again, as with Councillor Loden, I am supportive of this route. I think that it is a logical route, and I think that the design is pretty low impact, and I think in some ways that's probably the problem with it. However, I have had and accept the concerns raised with me in relation to traffic banking up within Strathcona Street at peak hour anyway, and am concerned that if we don't have speed humps, if we have a single lane slow point, that you may still see traffic and that the banking up would actually be worse. So I'm not sure on the alternate. I think that in terms of the issues raised in relation to the tree planting on Golding Street, and the provision of off-street parking, I note that the report talks to the fact that the tree placement would need to be carefully considered and so that it preserves parking. Can I just get some confirmation from the manager in relation to how that will be implemented?
Through you, Mayor Cole, the intention is that we try and put them at the beginning or the end of the car spaces so we don't lose an actual space. But having investigated further and as a result of our site meeting on Monday, we've had a look at the services on the western side of Golding Street, and the gas main that previously impeded our efforts to put trees down there is now abandoned. So we could possibly look at now putting some trees down the western side and take them out of the road on the eastern side. The actual trees themselves are lesser width than a parked car. So any time that they potentially, if there's no one there, it's any time the tree is going to be in jeopardy. But if we put it on the western side, we have an opportunity to further green the street and take them off the road.
And just a question, is it your view that the recommendation would need to be amended to reflect that intention. It talks to, I believe, minor changes. Do you believe that the tree placement is switching it from one side of the street to the other would be minor?
Through you, Mayor Cole, yes, that's how I'd view it, as a minor amendment.
Through you, Mayor Cole, if I add to that as well, I think we could put the trees on the western side under the greening programme. So we could do that anyway, whatever council decides about this. I think that's probably the better outcome, that we get the trees on the western side, and but we lose a couple of trees. You can see from the pictures and the report that there's a lot of trees being planted there since this was first designed. So I think that would be a better outcome.
I'll agree that the photos of Golding Street with the trees look great. So, and the other side of the street does look quite stark. So I can understand that. I am very conflicted on this because I also do have heard the concerns that were raised through the consultation in relation to people accessing the street from laneways, and believe that slowing cars and bikes would probably be beneficial, and I think that probably a slow point is more likely to do that. So I'm really interested to hear the debate, and we'll listen to my fellow councillors before deciding on a viewpoint here.
Okay, we'll move on. I'm just seeing if anyone else would like to speak on this item. Otherwise, I'll have to put the motion. Is there any further debate? Can we just, before, I do want to ask a question about sightlines, which has been raised by Murray Slythe in written and tonight. Thank you, Murray. I'm trying to, yeah, we've heard from you, Murray, we do understand. If you could just go to the issue of sightlines and the conflicts of coming out of the laneways, or potential conflicts.
Through you, Mayor Cole. So the tree closest to Colburn Lane is on the southern side of the laneway. So as you're coming out of Colburn Lane, your view to the right, which is the people coming from Carr Street, doesn't change. And your view to the left, which is the people potentially coming up the hill heading north, they're on the other side of the road. So then further back, potentially, the tree could obscure the view. But as they're getting closer to the laneway, there's no side obstruction.
And just in terms of the safety issues raised, do you think, I mean, I'm sort of thinking that the fact that it's going to be 30 kilometres would actually be beneficial. Would that be your view as an engineer?
Through you, Mayor Cole, that's correct, because the current speed limit's obviously 50, so it's a reduction of 20.
So 20 kilometre an hour reduction, so that when you're having that interaction between laneways coming out into the road with cars and bikes, you've got the 20 kilometre reduction.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Cole, yes, you've got more opportunity to react to situations, yes.
Yeah. And can we also just talk about the crossing point across Newcastle Street? And there was a request also for that first plateau on Golding Street to be removed. Could you just address that point as well, please, Manager?
Through you, Mayor Cole, I'm not in support of it being removed, but also when we had the site meeting said that it wasn't my decision. It was also had to be done in discussion with the Department of Transport, because it may actually jeopardise our grant funding if we make significant changes to the design, which they've approved at this point in time. The pavement there is already 7.5 metres wide, and so the truck issue exists to some extent now. I don't think the speed hump per se is going to make that situation it's not going to exacerbate it. It will, if anything, slow down the light vehicles rather than the heavy vehicles or the trucks, because they're the ones that will probably come around that corner at speed, whereas a truck's already displaying caution and their larger turning circle, they're going to have to be going slower anyway.
And just because I don't know if it's been captured because it was only just undertaken this week, but you undertook to carry out classifier data. The classifiers are the black strips that run across the road that measure traffic volume, speed, and the class of vehicle. Could you just, for the purposes of the public, just outline the speed levels and the percentage of commercial vehicles or trucks on Golding Street?
Through you, Mayor Cole, I'm going on memory. I do know I have it here, but anyway, the original reading was 600, and this week we took it. The average weekday traffic was 737, and the commercial percentage was 6% and 6.1% respectively, so it hasn't changed. So what it means in real terms is in the original reading, trucks made up 37 movements a day out of 600, And the new reading that they make up 44 movements a day out of 737. And the actual 85th percentile speed, as I said, from memory, is in the high 30s. It was like 38 point something.
Yeah, I think it was all well under 50. And also, can we just talk about this issue of the existing proposal for plateaus and speed humps versus slow points and what that would mean from a parking perspective?
Through you, Mayor Cole, I am actually a fan of the single lane slow points, but yeah, the detriment of those is the loss of parking. We have the two types. The first one, if there's no bicycle bypass, which Councillor Oden is suggesting might be an option as well, we'll end up losing 4 bays on average. If we have a bypass at the back of the slow point, then we've got to take out some room before and after the slow point, so you end up probably losing 6 per location. So if we were to put in 2 slow points in Strathcona Street, we're potentially losing between 8 and 12 parking bays on the street.
And I'm just also interested to know, in terms of parking, I know this is often a contentious issue when we do bike treatments. In terms of the residences surrounding there, do you know about off-street versus on-street parking for those, for that sort of housing around where the slow points may go?
Through you, Mayor Cole, I don't know exact numbers, but majority of them actually have the ability to park off the laneway or the right-of-way at the rear. There is a few developments are occurring, which is a development, battle axe, typical battle axe development, which means they're going to lose that ability to park. So those people will have to now access from Strathcona Street.
Okay. Yep, Councillor Gonchevsky.
Just one more question in relation to the timing. If the alternate on the green was progressed, it essentially just requires the preparation of a design and some consultation. Is the timing in terms of a report to council by March 2021, would that allow for the funding to be expended and a design to be, I guess, would you be able to consult with Department of Transport in parallel and provide all that information in March and then get whatever it is built and acquitted?
Through you, Mayor Cole, once again, because they're relatively simple treatments as they're currently designed, then yes, that is achievable. We would consult, similar to the urban road safety, we'd consult after the blackout period of the new year and then get a report back in March. If we go with the alternate one, that may complicate issues, but yes, it's achievable.
Is there any cost difference?
Through you, Mayor Cole, yes. Certainly the slow points with the bypass at the back are going to be more expensive because we're going to have to eat into the verge as well to give the correct clearance and then keep the trees, the separation. And so, yes, there'll be a cost differential there. It's not hugely expensive and it's certainly within the budget of the project because this project, ironically, has more money than we probably need at this time.
It's really leaving it open. Councillor Hallett.
In terms of the alternative, what would be the implications of these slow points in the slip lane, etc., for manoeuvrability of trucks in relation to the commercial premise?
Through you, Mayor Cole, we weren't actually contemplating putting them in Golding Street. We're looking exclusively at Strathcona Street in the residential portion. It wouldn't be suitable for Golding Street. We don't have the width of pavement there, and it would make it very difficult for the larger vehicles.
Can I just ask a further question? If we were to entertain the green, which is currently has no status, could the city proceed with the works on Florence and Golding, or would that just be lose its economy of scale to sort of proceed in part?
Through you, Mayor Cole, we'd probably still be risking the funding until we get some approval or confirmation from the Department of Transport that they're comfortable with it. I wouldn't like to proceed with the Golding one in isolation.
Okay. Councillors, Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Just a question about that funding. If we were to be in a position to be considering the green, what would be the status of the funding to proceed with this plan?
Through you, Mayor Cole, the first thing we do is talk to the Department of Transport in the new year to make sure that they're comfortable with the proposed change before we consulted, because obviously if they're not, then we'll have to reconsider the whole project.
But potentially it could still fall within the parameters of the funding?
Through UMACOL, yes. Because the original budget for this, as you may all recall, included the Car Street works, and the Department of Transport haven't amended their budget in respect to that, and that's why we have sufficient funds to do this one.
And just finally, is it your understanding of how this green alternate is worded that it doesn't contemplate any treatment to Florence and Golding? Sorry, Manager, you just don't have your mic on.
Through UMACOL, apologies. It specifically mentions in number 2 bicycle bypasses in Strathcona Street. So by that, we deliberately left out Golding Street and Florence Street.
So there would be no treatment on those 2 streets, but it would still create enough connection?
No, through UMACOL, the intention is still to do Golding Street with the raised plateaus, and Florence Street is essentially completed already other than line marking.
Okay.
Yeah, through your call, I think as we interpreted the amendment, it was to adjust the design on Strathcona, not Golding. So we would only consult on the changes in Strathcona and then come back to council with the results of more consultation on Strathcona only, but Golding would remain unchanged in terms of design.
Councillor Toppelberg.
Thank you. Just a question. My understanding, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a question for the manager or the director. My understanding of the Safe Active Streets program is that it's designed for people who would otherwise use that street to cycle, drive, walk, that it's to improve safety, not to encourage. It's different to installing dedicated bike lanes or to encourage it to be used as a dedicated cycling route. Am I correct? Is the idea that because Strathcona does provide that connectivity, as Councillor Loden suggested, coming straight through from Beatty Park, for example, that this would be for people, the idea is to make it safer for all users and not necessarily to encourage greater use or greater bicycle speed or some of the other concerns that have been raised. Is that a correct summary?
Through UMACOL, that is correct. It's not intended to be a commuter cyclist route. It's meant to be a broader route that all cyclists are comfortable with using.
So the idea and the possible alternate recommendation that's on the white from where I'm looking, but on the green clearly on your tables, that would be impossible to implement without the removal of car bays. I know you said 8 to 12, but presumably there would it's impossible to install, if it's 1 or 2 slow points, it's impossible to do that without removing car bays. Is that correct?
Through UMACOL, that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further comment or debate or questions before I put the motion? Okay, I'll put it. All those in favour of the officer recommendation? All those against? I declare it carried. Okay, the next item raised by members of the public gallery, 10.3, which is North Perth traffic report. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by Councillor Hallett.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. I do understand Jerry's comments from the gallery in relation to sort of amalgamation of the North Perth petition and the North Perth Common into one item. However, after, I'm going to say 2 years, I'm really ready to just actually support some action here. So I am largely supportive of this item. I have some words that I was thinking in relation to an amendment that would require, prior to the consultation coming back, just an updated traffic speed and volume report for the area, given that it's been a while. and just, to see if there's, further and ongoing impacts of any changes. But other than that, I think that there's evidence to go back and consult on these types of interventions, noting that we can build on them over time. I genuinely wish we'd gone in and put those slow points in a couple of years ago now, but we didn't. So we're going to go out and talk about it again. And I'm supportive of us doing that, subject to maybe an amendment in relation to getting some more data over the next few months.
It was seconded by Councillor Hallett.
I guess I would probably echo most of Councillor Godchevsky's points, just in terms of the time, because it's taken so long. I'm also keen for some action. I think for us it's been quite difficult because we've had mixed approaches, I guess, to some of the consultation over this period. And so we've, as councillors and as decision makers, we've had quite mixed views expressed to us very vehemently and not always not aligned at all. And, given that there doesn't seem to be a consensus that's been represented to us so far, at a minimum, if we can consult on this, I hope that residents take this opportunity also to, put their views as strongly as they have up till now. And I hope that we can get something that's agreeable. I think the area obviously needs some action. I worry a bit about deferring as suggested, given that that is kind of how we got 2 years later without anything being done in the first place. So, and I'd support some wording about updating the data as well.
Councillor Loden, did you wish to speak? No. Does anyone wish to speak to this? Councillor Fotakis?
Yeah, I've just got a question through you, Mayor. Just a statement was made from the gallery with regards to the extension of the 40km/h trial to wider Vincent with a date, I think, of 2022-23. I just wanted to get a confirmation on the status and of that, just some clarification to that statement.
Through you, Mayor Cole, just to respond that we have the draft accessible city strategy out for public consultation now, and that proposal for an extension of the 40k zone into all residential areas throughout the city of Perth is a proposal in the draft strategy, and we'll have consultation feedback to provide to council in the new year on that.
And that's open now and running through to mid-February. Yep. Any further comments? You're going to ask a question? Amendment. Go ahead.
Can I just, actually, I'll just ask a question just to confirm resourcing implications. Through you to the manager, if I was to put forward an amendment in relation to speed and volume data collection in the study area prior to the consultation report coming back to us, is that something that could be accommodated given everything else you've got going on between now and March 2021?
Through you, Mayor Cole. The only reason I'm hesitating is we've got the follow-up, the next round 8 of the 40k trial data collection due early in the new year after school recommences, in which we typically do this as well. And we've made that the priority, so we'd probably be looking at March to do new data collection for this area.
It's just because that's such a big area that usually takes up all of the classifier allocation, and that is that we are bound to do that regular measuring because of the reporting requirements we have for the trial.
Could we do one street? Like, could we do Alma?
Through you, Mayor Cole, I'm sure we can accommodate one street in Alma, yes.
Then I'll just put an amendment to request in number 6 that requests administration undertake speed and volume data collection for Alma Road in the study area and present in March 2021 that'll do. And present in March 2021.
That does give administration February only because data is not collected during school holidays. Would that work, Manager?
Through you, Mayor Cole, yes. We can,
Right,
we
okay.
can locate an extra classifier to do that one.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Hallett. Is there any debate? Okay, I'll put it. All those in favour? Declare that carried unanimously. We're back to the substantive. Any further comments? I will just briefly comment. This has been a long-running issue and it's sort of come to council a number of times and been deferred, and then it's gone back to technical experts to sort of form a view on how this precinct could best work. And I think the issue is here that we have limited funding to start this, and that this is not necessarily the end solution, but it is a beginning. And this is not saying that we're going to go ahead. It's actually going back out to consultation, an opportunity for people to say what they think. I have been contacted by various people, and as Councillor Hallett says, there's people who are in favour, people who aren't. There's a big appetite for 40 kilometres in this area, but I think people see that working in tandem with some traffic road safe calming treatments. So I think this is really an attempt by the city to put in place something. In terms of moving to a situation where we have quiet residential streets, it is very difficult. When we look at the precincts, we do need to allow for access of residents that live within those streets. We do need to allow for movement to and from Coles shopping centre. It is very difficult to comprehend that we could become a city where we have significant local streets either cul-de-saced or blocked. And I think that was an approach that's been taken by the city perhaps back in the 90s. And I think that we have seen that has led to impacts. I know that I've just seen the recent traffic data where the black spot funding has gone into Chelmsford Road, which has reduced traffic quite substantially on Chelmsford, but Grosvenor Road is now seeing double the amount of traffic on Grosvenor that is travelling down Chelmsford. So we know these interventions do have flow-on effects, and this proposal is about trying to treat the streets similarly, and to understand that we do need that flow of traffic through our local streets, but to provide some discouragement to commuter traffic. And I think it will work really well if we can get that support for 40 kilometres. Every time I have a meeting with residents, I ask them what they think. I met with a big group of residents from Mount Hawthorn on Saturday morning at Menzies Park. There's probably about 40 residents there, 40 to 50, and they all said that they would support 40 kilometres an hour. So that is a really good opportunity to be part of the solution broadly across the city of Vincent. On View Street, trialling the median strip closure on Fitzgerald Street, this is something that is really strongly supported by our local town team, North Perth Local. And I think that we have seen that having all vehicle movement through the North Perth Common is actually making that place quite hostile, and that we do need to take steps to make that more pedestrian friendly if we are to try to achieve a true meeting place and in the heart of North Perth, which was the intention. It is a trial, and then we'll be monitoring to see those impacts. I think it is part of the city's desire to do things in a more holistic way rather than in the good old days where we just used to treat single streets. So we've learnt from that past history. So I know that this is not going as far as the petitioners would have liked, but I do believe it's a step in the right direction. And again, it's an opportunity for consultation and to hear the views of all people living on those streets. So I do support moving forward with this at this point. Are there any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Okay, next item raised from a member of the public gallery is 9.4, which is number 95 to 117 Agena Street, Mount Hawthorn, proposed signage. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by Councillor Castle.
Thank you. Appreciated the clarification today in relation to what was existing in the space. We have a policy that needs to be reviewed in relation to signage. I certainly am supportive of the city's position in relation to third-party billboard signage. However, I do believe that we may need to consider other signage in relation to that isn't necessarily for a profit-making purpose. So I'm supportive of the officer recommendation, but I don't. And there is an amendment on the cream that I would support in relation to a time-limited approval.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Nicole. Look, I just want to ask a question. There has been a number of emails back and forth today, and just to be very clear about what is currently approved and what is being sought to be approved. Is it correct to say that there's portions of the existing signage that is unapproved, and that part of the consequence of this application would be to bring those existing signs into alignment, into approval?
Through you, Mayor Cole, in short, yes, there was a circulated replacement report, and in that report, attachment 5 includes a photo taken of the site, which captures all of the signs existing, and that makes a distinction between what has previously been approved, being the Cardinals logo, as well as 2 sponsor signs identified in blue, and it also shows unauthorised signage, which is 2 sponsor signs to the eastern end and another sign on the western end. So there's unauthorised signage that is on site, and ultimately this approval is seeking those to be continued in terms of that placement on the site. So it wouldn't extend the footprint of that existing signage as you view in attachment 5.
And just to add to that, if you can see the, it's now referred, what would normally happen in this case in the title of the item is it would have in brackets unauthorised existing development. So it's a retrospective approval being sought. Councillor Castle, do you have any further comments or questions?
Thank you for that clarification. I can't actually load that replacement report, but I think you've clarified what my understanding was. Look, I'm also in supportive. I have the same reservations in terms of how this this particular application fits within our existing policies, and given that that is due for review, I think this is a good example of where we might need to be clearer about our position. I think the big distinction is that this is a community group as opposed to a profit-making enterprise, but that's something that can be teased out through that review, and I'm supportive of this application allowing what is essentially already happening with one club to happen with 2.
Councillors? I will speak to it. I do support the application, but I do have a bit of a concern about the policy framework that we're operating under, in that this is deemed to be the council approving a third-party billboard. That is slightly problematic from my perspective, in that we have been quite fiercely defending billboard applications in the City of Vincent, and most recently considering a digital billboard application where we went through SAT mediation, and whilst that is a confidential process, one of the things that I think that the city does always consider in these types of applications is what existing billboards we have approved within the city, and they are billboards that existed in the City of Perth prior to the City of Vincent being established, and then there are 2 current approvals on land, private land, which has quite significant site constraints where they are on rolling approvals. So this idea of approving this as a third-party billboard on our city building in a park could be problematic just from a planning perspective, whilst the reality on ground is not so problematic. I did respond to Adam Kovalev's, So if my apologies, Adam, that's probably terrible, who's the president of the University Cricket Club. And I spoke to him today just to explain to him the policy framework situation. And it was very interesting to learn that Adam has been a councillor in the city of Swan and knew exactly what I was talking about and said he completely understood the policy framework issue. And when I put to him that I would table an amendment for a time limited approval to be consistent so that we could deal with billboard applications more generally in the city, he said that he would understand and did not foresee that to be an issue. So so that's really, it's a technicality, but I think that having attended SAT meetings, it is an important technicality, and it does expose that need for us to review our policy, which has been requested for next year, and to look at a new category of signage which is relevant to sporting and community groups where it relates to sponsorship, and that may also have issues at some of our other sporting fields. For example, now that we have the lease back from Florida Athena at Lidders Stadium. So I think this is something we need to grapple with and come up with a different category. Otherwise, we're going to be approving billboards at on our public land, which I don't think the city or the council's intent really doesn't really reflect what it is. So bit of context. Any further? Yep, Councillor Gonchevsky.
May I move the amendment on the cream, please?
Any seconder? Councillor Fotakis. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Fotakis.
Yeah, I just want to add just that comment that you said there are a number of other local governments that do have within their policies points regarding sports field advertising clauses within that. So I agree with you, Mayor, that it's timely that we've got that policy coming up, and this I think with the understanding of the applicant just allows us that bit of time to maybe plug some of those holes.
Councillors, any further comments on the amendment? I can't see Councillor Toppelberg anymore.
I can hear you, I just can't see you.
There you are. You don't have any comments, Councillor Toppelberg?
No, thank you.
Okay, you've disappeared off the screen, so if at any time you want to get my attention, just also please call out. Thank you. Be great.
No.
Okay, we've got you supersized now. Can't miss you. Okay, all those in favour of the motion? All those against? No, all in favour of the amendment? My apologies. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against? No one against? Okay, we're back to the substantive. Are there any further comments? Okay, I'll put the substantive. All those in favour? I declare it carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Okay, that takes us to the deputation for the evening, which was on item 11.5. The support for the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to recognise former colleague, Councillor Ros Harley, who was co-chair of the RAP when this original action that we are now talking about at the time, and your strong support, so I appreciate that, Ros. You did steal a lot of my thunder though, so I'm a little bit disappointed about that, but anyway. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This is part of our standing orders. It's part of what our mayor says at the start of all important meetings. It's also part of what we say during other meetings that we have, such as our RAP working group, our STAG and other community forums. We do this not just because it's a procedure, we do it because this is a value that we have, and we made a conscious decision to do that. The key part is they're the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, the traditional owners of these lands. These lands were never ceded, and this still remains unfinished business for our community. The Uluru Statement from the Heart, as Ros mentioned, was released on the 26th of May 2016. This was made up of First Nations Constitutional Convention, which was a 16-member referendum council. This group of people undertook consultation across the nation, engaging 1,200 people in that process, which then culminated in the Uluru Statement from the Heart. As mentioned, the three key things are a voice around constitutional change, a treaty the legislative change that is required, and the truth-telling process around the Madaraka Commission. To my understanding, this is an extremely rare occurrence to have this form of consensus from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and nations to come together with this one clear view of what they want. This represents broadly a request from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to our nation on how to best support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples going forward. It's particularly relevant given the current lack of progress in the closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Reconciliation Australia, who is the body that we provide our reconciliation action plan to and we report to, publishes a RAP barometer each year. For the statisticians in the room, the stats that they share is they have a 2.2% error margin to a 95% confidence interval, meaning that they're very confident in the numbers that they're providing. 6.9% specifically for the WA area because it's a smaller sample size. Hope I've got that right. So there's a number of things they ask in this RAP barometer, but the three that I thought were relevant were that more Australians now believe it's important to undertake formal truth-telling processes. The general community, 89%, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, 93%. Why believe it's important to undertake a formal truth-telling process in relationship to Australia's shared history. However, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people remain more likely to feel this is very important compared to the general public. The second piece was, we believe it's very important for key constitutional changes to happen. The general community and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people widely believe it's important to implement the key constitutional changes that have been proposed in Australia. In particular, stronger majorities of both groups feel it's very important to remove racial discrimination from the Constitution, 81% in the general community. The importance of teaching and learning about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures is increasing as well. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are more likely to believe it is very important than Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures should be compulsory in school, 61%, compared to the general public, which is 43%. However, there's been a strong increase since the general community since the last report in 2018. My take on this analysis is there's broad support across our nation and within Western Australia for formal truth-telling, constitutional change, and teaching and learning about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures. I don't have specific data for Vincent, but I would assume that these statistics are representative of Vincent and more likely on the low side given consultation that we've had in this space previously. Our Innovate RAP was endorsed by this council on the 30th of April 2019, which included the action, acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and histories, investigate opportunities for the city and council members to advocate for a recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the Australian Constitution. Investigate opportunities for the city and council to support the Uluru Statement from the Half. Both of these are due December 2020, so this is our last window of opportunity to get it done. This was endorsed after community advertising and consultation. This was also presented to our Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group 2 weeks ago, where we received strong support from that group of people who are all residents of the City of Vincent. On the 10th of July 2019, during NAIDOC Week, Ken Wyatt, Minister for Indigenous Affairs, delivered a speech which asked Australians to walk with him on a journey for Indigenous recognition through the Uluru Statement. So for me, this is straightforward. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have clearly articulated their view around support for the Uluru Statement. Reconciliation Australia has demonstrated there is broad support across Australia and in WA to address the issues which are covered under the Uluru Statement. Our council has endorsed an action to investigate this opportunity, which has been consulted with our community, and this is fully backed by the city's Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group. So I support the actions outlined in this motion, and I think that we should be walking with Ken Wyatt on this journey and with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples towards Indigenous recognition, and I ask my fellow council members for your support in this as well. Thank you.
That was excellent. Thank you, Councillor Loden. That was seconded by Councillor Castle.
Yeah, I'm regretting that right now to follow that speech. I really don't want to try and add too much because as both Councillor Loden and former Councillor Harley have so eloquently put, this has been something that has been a long time coming and has been worked on extensively by themselves and all members of the RAP working group at the currently and previous members, and I want to thank them all for all the hard work they had in persisting with a number of these actions, and in particular with this. I think it's really important. I see our support for the Indigenous community in Vincent and across Australia as an essential part of the DNA of Vincent, and it's something that we've never shied away from, and that I don't intend to now. I think our support for this statement and for those actions is incredibly important. I also think that despite what some people might say, that it is important for local government to take a position on these matters. It does make a difference when we put our hands in the air and say, this is what we support, this is what we believe. It not only reflects the views of our community and what they've been telling us for many years, but it also helps to advocate for those positions at all levels of government. And I don't think the impact of a local government position can be understated. I think it does matter. So I'm very happy to support this, and happy to see that we've just snuck in under the wire in December 2020.
Councillors, any further comments? I'll just very brief. Again, that's already been said very, very well, and thank you very much, former Councillor Harley, and to the members of our RAP group. We have an incredibly engaged RAP group who are coming up with some fantastic ideas, and we've just had one of our best NAIDOC weeks ever, which was just such a joy. I just want to say that I do think that this type of recognition is really important, because there are still significant issues we're really failing to get traction, and every time the Close the Gap report comes out, it just really points to me that without that ability to have that level of representation and self-determination, I just feel like we're going to not really make the tracks that we really should have been making by now. So I do think that statements such as Ulru's statement really does go to the heart of the matter, of true representation, of true voice, of having that seat at the table, and self-determination, and the ability to drive change from the community level. I don't think we're making enough progress without this, and it's becoming more and more vital as we move forward. I'd also like to comment that even in my time on council, just the shift in the community in terms of the embracing of Aboriginal culture and learning is quite significant. I went to a daycare centre where the 3-year-olds gave the welcome to country. I see at my local primary school the uniform is changing before my eyes, and the recognition and the effort that is going into embracing Aboriginal culture is so much more on a year-on-year basis. The way in which young people are engaging on these issues, it's really phenomenal just to see this happening in a relatively short space of time, and I hope that provides a lot of hope for the future. But I think that we do need to move beyond the recognition into the real action to really start having that impact on those gaps around health, education, mortality, wealth, etc. Those are incarceration. These are issues that continue to pervade in Australia, and that have still got a long way to go. So I fully endorse this, and I had sort of thought that we had pretty much got there, but I do agree in retrospect, after reflecting on this, that we really did need to take this final step. So thank you, Councillor Loden and our RAP members for this final step in really pushing this forward. And Councillor Harley, that T-shirt is awesome. Be very happy to wear one. Thank you. Well, we'll take a few off your hands. Are there any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Okay, that concludes items raised by members of the public gallery. So we'll go to the beginning of the agenda and deal with items that have not yet being tackled. So that takes us to item 9.5, Northbridge Entertainment Precinct Amendment number 41 to City of Perth City Planning Scheme number 2. Just noting Councillor Fotakis is leaving the chamber due to a proximity interest. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Loden. Councillor Gontaszewski.
Me too.
Any further debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare it carried. You should tell Council Fotakis she can quickly race back. Next item is 9.7, amendment to policy number 2.2.13, parklets. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved by Councillor Toppelberg, seconded by Councillor Loden.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. So with just questions, I know the item was in relation to, we had a lengthy discussion at the briefing about the proposal on Oxford Street, and there was some discussion about the parklets. I just wanted to confirm or affirm the status of consultation and the feedback from neighbouring businesses, whether they be adjacent or otherwise, and just confirm the officer's understanding of what the policy provision is, and also our understanding at council in terms of the decision making. So when a parklet is proposed and it goes out to consultation, if the feedback from the surrounding businesses, whether they be landowners, occupiers or otherwise, if the feedback from them is that they do not want the parklet to proceed, what is the process that then happens? I know Councillor Gontaszewski spoke earlier about some traffic matters and that those are only part of the consideration, but in particular where they're taking over car bays, can we get some ideas as to how staff interpret the policy in terms of consultation?
Through you, Mayor Cole, as the policy states, we consult with those who are affected. I've got some examples here of what we've done in the past, as it is the officer's discretion of what that is. So, for example, the parklet outside Modus Coffee, we advertise in the window for 14 days as per the policy, as well as online and letters to surrounding residents and businesses. So for this example, that was to approximately 100 letters were sent out to businesses and residents within a 50-metre radius of the parklet. And to go back to your question regarding if there was not support for a parklet, I believe that this has not been the case for any of our parklets and our consultation that we have had. So I can't comment on what we've done previously for that, but we would obviously look at what the reasoning behind that is, what the comments were, and weigh that up between the support for that parklet. But for previous parklets, we've had overwhelming support for them. Okay,
so, and not flogging a dead horse, and I know that it's not on the agenda, but I guess given that the proposal that was on the table last week for Oxford Street was essentially described as a permanent parklet with a roof, whilst there were some other implications in terms of Department of Lands and over the development application. Given the feedback that was received from neighbouring properties, could we expect that if that was the feedback provided for a parklet application, that the matter would either come to council or not come to council or not be approved if the feedback was as has been received in relation to the Oxford Street proposal?
Through you, Mayor Cole, as there was also positive feedback on that instance, we would also take that into consideration. And if this was a parklet, we would suggest or recommend that it was approved.
Okay, thank you.
Was it Councillor Gontaszewski, the seconder? Councillor Loden, sorry.
I'm supportive of the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Okay, the next item is 9.8, Beatty Park 2062 project update. Can I have a mover? Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by Councillor Loden.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. I understand and appreciate that there's been a lot of work that has gone into getting this project to this point. And there's also, I believe, quite a bit of work to come in terms of community engagement, but also in gelling everything together so that it is in a format that would allow us to make some key decisions in relation to the future of Beatty Park. I'm actually just going to, so the upshot of all that is that I am not supportive of the officer recommendation as it stands. Just trying to, I have some proposed wording for a proposed alternate that essentially the purpose of which is to both note the project update, note that we'll be consulting and seeking community views, but also that we would require the CEO to prepare an options paper for restoration works, including costings, and that those works would need to be within the city's capacity to meet within the short to medium term. And also to request the city prepare some costings for additional critical works around water ingress, because my understanding is that we're doing some work in this space, but we as yet don't have a full amount to consider before us in mid-year budget review in relation to some of those water ingress works. So I'm actually just going to email that to everybody. But yes, I won't be supporting the officer recommendation as it stands currently. I think that there needs to be a more fulsome fleshing out of this, as this is an important item.
Councillor Loden.
I've already spoken.
No, this is a whole new item. You get this. I know you spoke a lot on the last item, but you can speak again on this new item.
Apologies. I feel like I need to read what I've just received from Councillor.
Yes, I think if we could just take a pause, if everyone wants to just read the email that's come through.
And my apologies, I intended to get this out earlier and then children happened. So it was not a good pre-meeting. So
it's okay. You're entitled to raise this at any time, and I appreciate that you've done it in writing at this point, as opposed to dictating to Wendy, who I'm sure Wendy's appreciative as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Just maybe some clarifications to either the CEO or the relevant director around that this is an alternative, not an amendment of the existing recommendation, because I know there is some overlaps there. So if you could just clarify that.
Through you, Mayor Cole, my view would be that the items after 1 could all just be amendments on the current recommendation, and we can certainly fulfill the requests put in those proposed amendments around the additional work.
So we can deal with this as an amendment. Councillor Loden, you're the seconder. Do you wish to speak first?
Yes, I'm happy to go first. I guess the key thing here is the requirement for the CEO to prepare an options paper, the potential, we're talking to the amendment there, aren't we? Yeah. Can I reserve my right? Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Councillor Gonchevsky, do you wish to move your amendment?
Sure thing. I will move the amendment in the digital.
Seconded by Councillor Loden. Do you wish to speak to it?
I think I've largely said this, but I really believe that we need to, within our recommendations, have clear direction for administration on what we want them to do. I think there's been a huge amount of work done, but I don't believe that the project steering group is the decision-making group. We are the decision-making group in relation to this level project. The council is going to be the decision maker in relation to the expending of capital works funding, and I believe that we are the ones that should be, the recommendation should reflect council's decision rather than devolving decisions around actions and milestones to a project steering group, and then not necessarily reporting them up through council for subsequent decisions. So essentially, I would like to see an options paper I believe that the information has, as the CEO has said, that this should be something that's achievable because of all the work that has already been done in this space. And I would also like to see that, much like the work that was done at the East Perth Power Station to essentially get the, get it waterproof. I think that's what I would really like to see. I think that I would really like to see some of that, those critical works to prevent water ingress to come forward to us for consideration, because regardless of the way we choose to proceed in the long term, I'd like to see us taking steps in relation to preventing future damage to the site.
Councillor Loden.
Thank you, Mayor. To my understanding, this is something that the city is currently working on anyway from my role in that group, and is in the process of preparing an options paper for that group, which would then come through to council anyway. But I would seek the CEO's feedback on this. Does he have a view on the proposed amendment, particularly the requirement, that one?
Sorry, could you?
Item 4, just the amendment requires the CEO to prepare an options paper for restoration works to the grandstand, which would be within the city's capacity to meet within the short to medium term by April 2021.
Through you, Mayor Cole, just the comment on, I'd be useful just to clarify council's understanding of restoration work. So the information we've got and the estimates we've got on the building, the grandstand structure at the moment is not predicated on what we'd normally refer to as restoration. Restoration would imply that we're restoring it to its original 1960 type condition. The works that we've got some indicative, quite well-founded costs on are essentially essential maintenance and essential structural works to ensure that the current grandstand doesn't deteriorate any further from its current condition. We don't have any detailed indication of what it would take to completely restore it to its original condition, as opposed to trying to just shore up its current foundations and structural integrity to preserve it. So it'd be more like preservation works, if that was okay with the Deputy Mayor. Preservation works as opposed to
preservation works to be included, given the timelines.
Can I just clarify though, CEO, as a member of the Beatty Park Steering Committee, my understanding when Peter Baxendale, the structural engineer with heritage expertise, presented his body of work to the group was that the essential works was the dealing with the water ingress, and that he did state that even if you left it as is, the structure would remain standing. It's not that it's going to crumble and fall. It's actually quite a strong structure. The concrete is in good condition. The even the sorry, it's late. Not really late. It's just late in the year. The facade is actually, apart from the fact it's not safety glass, like it's actually quite strong as a structure. So for me, the essential maintenance is dealing with the water ingress, and then we're talking about structural works. Even that, it's structurally sound. It's more about compliance and bringing it to a. Can we actually find, perhaps it's not restoration, but I don't necessarily agree that it's essential maintenance either, because that sort of indicates that it has to be done in a sort of an immediate priority fashion. And for me, that was the water ingress issue. So preservation may be a better word. Would you be prepared to accept that as the mover of the amendment? And as the seconder, would you be happy to change restoration to preservation? Okay, continue. Yes, we're all getting weary.
My only other question is, because of this requirement now, what would be changing in your process around what we were working through already through the Beatty Park option, Beatty Park, whatever, steering committee?
Through you, Mayor Cole, we had put some indicative funds into the Capital Works program for Beatty Park, but we haven't gone to that next level of detailing what those works could be. So in terms of Amendment 4, we would want to be and doing that work in order for the city to have a more defined annual budget. So we'd try to meet that deadline as part of the annual budget process, which I'm assuming is the reason for the April deadline. And we would need to run through the annual budget process with the council in consultation with the steering committee as well.
I hope you don't mind if I could perhaps speak now, because I think it may assist. As a member of the Beatty Park Steering Committee, we had our last meeting last week, and at the conclusion of that meeting, I did request of the group and the CEO that when the steering committee reconvene, that we actually have some definitive response in relation to the essential maintenance work, which is the ingress of water, because my understanding was that we were intending to fully fund that as soon as possible, and that we'd secondly would start to look at our capacity to afford the, what was the word we just agreed on? The preservation work, so that if our advocacy program, which is continuing, goes nowhere, that we would at least start to allocate some funds towards working towards the preservation ourselves. So I'm very happy to support this amendment, because that pretty much reflects exactly what my request was at the Beatty Park Steering Committee at the conclusion of the meeting, in order to demonstrate that the city could, given the fact that we're spending $2.9 million on Beatty Park this year, it's not, it's not outside of the realm of reasonable that we could continue to put money towards, say, preserving the entry of the grandstand, so that we could at least say, as part of our advocacy program, that we are chipping away at it and we are putting funds towards that. So that request was made, and I do agree with Councillor Gondaszewski that in council resolutions, I think it is useful to actually, as a council, provide some direction, and I'm very happy to see it formalised in this way, because that was a discussion at the steering group. It's very important, I think, that our council is on board with what we do need to do, and that we are also displaying to our community that we're not just noting something, that we are we're looking at all avenues, and obviously we're hoping for some support from our state and federal counterparts, and you will see a picture of me in the local paper coming up holding a tube of Sealy's No More Gaps. Yes, on Monday. So that's part of the advocacy campaign. It is continuing, and we are seeking that support. But I think it is really important that as a council, we demonstrate that we are continuing to maintain these facilities. The asset management strategy, which is an item on tonight, is about having that conversation with the community about the scale and the age of these major facilities that the city has some 20 years ago inherited from the city of Perth. But I think the message needs to also be clear that whilst they are not, fully compliant, etc., we are chipping away at it, and we are dealing with it as a local government in the way that we can. And where it's not compliant, it's safe, because we have cordoned off the grandstand for now whilst we've had this conversation. But we now have this excellent body of work from a structural engineer where we can actually say, well, if we want to at least demonstrate we're making tracks in preservation, we can start somewhere, and we know that this work won't go to waste if we start small and we build on that. And I think that the water ingress situation is where we absolutely prioritise, and then we can start by looking at sections of the grandstand, which is the work that the structural engineer has provided, whilst we continue to advocate and whilst we have the conversation with our community about sentiment, historic value, the fact that whilst the grandstand can't be used for competition or crowds like it was in the old days, that there is still some value that comes from enclosing the outdoor swimming pool, that there are a lot of different factors here about it being an A-class reserve, that we have talked to Development WA about development potential, and it is a very complex situation. But I do think that we have the ability to take steps in the way that you can when you have a limited budget. So we have some good knowledge about what needs to be done, some excellent knowledge, and I think we can start to build on that whilst we engage with our community and whilst we continue to advocate. So I fully support this, and I again just say it's really reflective of what was raised at the end of the last meeting about not leaving it so open, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have to take responsibility, even though it is an incredibly costly, large-scale regional facility, which sees more than, well, up to 1 million people a year come through the doors from all over the metropolitan area. At the end of the day, if the federal government and state government say we don't wish to provide you with any funding, ultimately we're responsible. So I fully support the amendment. Are there any further comments? Councillor Loden?
Just to say that I'm supportive of the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay, I'll put the motion of the amendment. All those in favour? Declare the amendment carried. We're back to the substantive. And is there any further comments on the substantive motion? Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour? Declare that carried. Okay, item 9.9, review of policy number 4.1.22, prosecution and enforcement. I believe this was raised by Councillor Gonchevsky, seconded by Councillor Loden.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Look, I think this is an important policy because I think that it's actually very community facing. I think that one of the ways that there's sort of two ways that community will engage this policy. One is if they themselves receive an infringement, a notice, a direction from an authorised officer in relation to a breach of our local laws or our policies. The other way is when they observe someone breaching our local laws and report it to the city and expect to see some action taken. I have spoken on a couple of occasions about how important it is, I believe, to engage early with council in relation to policy changes and reviews. Our policy development review policy specifies that. So this draft policy was presented to council through a workshop, but at the point where the draft had already been completed. So it wasn't discussed with council prior to drafting. The report that we see tonight notes that a review was undertaken, but it doesn't talk about what the results were, and it certainly doesn't talk about whether a review was undertaken of what council or community felt about the previous approach. I note that much procedural information has been removed to be put into administrative procedures. And whilst I am fairly sympathetic to that approach, I also believe that what's been removed here is much of the strategic direction and expectations of a council and community. The policy talks about the city conducting its compliance and enforcement activities in a manner that is transparent and that decision making will be documented up in the objectives section, and I'm supportive of that. But there are no policy statements about what transparency looks like or what documentation the city would expect to be undertaken in relation to compliance activities. And it also doesn't talk about documenting exercises of discretion. The previous policy was fairly limited around prosecution and enforcement. The current scope retains prosecution, but it also references compliance in the name, and I believe that this makes it much broader in terms of the way that the community would perceive it. It doesn't set a direction in terms of whether we're going to be proactive or reactive in terms of our policy approach, not just to development applications, because I know that the city in recent years has tried to shift towards perhaps a more proactive approach in terms of looking at whether development has been delivered in alignment with approvals rather than just waiting for someone to say that, you know, my neighbour didn't do what they said they'd do. I don't also really believe that this policy can be effectively utilised in terms of some of those issues around compliance that we would see as being quite, I guess, the frequent flyer issues, not necessarily the big development prosecutions, but just matters of general compliance and enforcement of our local laws. And so I think it would warrant some more attention there. And it also doesn't talk about the transition from infringement to notice to prosecution. And that also can be very frustrating for members of the community, not really understanding when an issue's been raised as to how that's going to transition. And I guess also one of the other things that I see in terms of being a councillor is that we may start to see particular issues that are dealt with as more routine matters of compliance, but do we have an expectation that they are monitored and assessed so that we can potentially identify trends or issues that would then be trigger a different sort of a more proactive response in terms of enforcement and assessment and monitoring. So the upshot of all that is that whilst I appreciate the work that's been done and that the principles in here, many of which are sound in relation to looking at the, I believe it was the DPP guidelines, the DPP guidelines incorporation and the statement of prosecution policy and guidelines. I think that this should ultimately follow the process that we're keen to see for our policy review, which is to have a general discussion with council and ensure that council's strategic vision is incorporated in a policy review process. And I'm also not really in favour of having policies that lack so much detail that they aren't necessarily transparent to members of the community that may want to look at a public policy document and actually say, are you doing what you said you'd do in this space? And so I think that, from my opinion, I think we could do a little bit more in striking that balance around high level principles and also a bit more detail for our community. So I will be foreshadowing a deferral for that information and that process to be undertaken.
Thank you, Councillor Gonczewski. That was seconded by Councillor Loden.
I know how you felt earlier. I would be supportive of a deferral given the feedback that Councillor Gonczewski has just provided. Thank you.
Is there any further commentary first, Councillor Hallett? No? You just want to get on with it? Would you like to move it?
Like
Councillor Hallett can second. Yes, there being no discussion because it's a procedural motion. All those in favour? Do you want to stipulate a time frame or would you like to liaise?
No.
No? Okay, that's fine. Happy to just move on. CEO's asking me a question. Yes, and also just to point out that Councillor Wallace voted against item 9.4. I didn't call it at the time. If that ever happens, please feel free to shout out at me or make a fuss. So I'm sorry, apologies that I missed that. We'll make sure that's recorded in the minutes. Thank you. Okay, next item is 10.2, Asset Management and Sustainability Strategy 2020 to 2030. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Hallett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of the officer recommendation. However, I'm also supportive of the addition, the amendment, which actually wasn't requested by myself, was requested by the Mayor, around the asset management sustainability strategy amendments, but I'll let the seconder speak first.
Councillor Hallett.
It's great to have this strategy developed, and I'm very supportive of the proposed amendment.
Councillor Loden.
Can I move the amendment on the greeny grey or white for Councillor Toppelberg?
Seconded by Councillor Hallett.
I think I'll actually let the Mayor speak to this one because she's the one that requested it.
Councillor Hallett as the seconder. It has been a long road to get here, and this amendment is actually very minimal. It really is just about trying to, I think when you read the strategy document, you do have to go quite deep into the document to really get that overview of the purpose, the sort of challenge, the vision and the objectives, just to give that kind of overview of what it is that we're seeking to achieve. So in short, all this really does is take what's already there and put it what would probably be on a one-pager, but also it does amend the vision. The current vision is that our resources and assets are planned and managed in an efficient and sustainable manner. And I think that really Council's been trying to really say something a bit more than that about the fact that that not only are our assets planned and managed in an efficient and sustainable manner, but they're well cared for, well utilised, that we have a growing and diverse community, that we have a changing environment. So it's really just trying to pick up on some of those other critical issues that we're facing. So I would say this is a very minimal amendment, but it's just really designed for someone, if they pick up the strategy or the discussion paper, they can kind of get this kind of glean in one page, which will give them a bit of an idea very quickly about what it is that we're trying to do. That's all. Are there any further comments on the amendment? Yes. Okay, I'll put it. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Yes, Councillor Toppelberg voting in favour. We're back to the substantive. Is there any further comment on the substantive? Councillor Hallett.
Only just to flag to the possibly 12 people watching online or anyone else who sees this, that not to be put off by the name of the strategy, and it's incredibly important that a lot of community conversation happens around the elements that are in it, because this is a long time coming, and I guess a long time being actioned as well. So it's great to have it going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hallett. I wholeheartedly agree, and I think that by using those case studies and by talking about Beatty Park, for example, as a case study, I think that in and of itself just really brings this into the sort of tangible realm, and really goes to the heart of the issue about the fact that we are running these major facilities, that they are aging, they're substantial, they cost a lot to operate, and that conversation to have with the community about utilisation, even rationalisation, where we've talked about Banks Pavilion. I think that we do need to have this broader strategic discussion first, because even I remember when Councillor Wallace came to a candidate session and said to me, why are you demolishing all the toilets in the park? So we definitely need to have a conversation about these things before we start making steps forward in terms of the number, the range, the extent of assets, whether we look at making some really beautiful at the cost of others. These are things that we really importantly need our community feedback on, because these are our greatest community assets, and a lot of our funding goes towards maintaining them, running them, keeping them open to our community. So it's our absolute core business, and it's tied so strongly to our long-term financial planning and health as an organisation. And we also have that asset ratio issue and those ratios that measure us each year, where we have been struggling. And this is really an attempt to not only have the conversation, but actually really get to a point where we feel that we are at a level with our assets where we're really self-sufficient, managing them well, that they are attractive to our community, and that they are being really well utilised. So I completely agree, a vital conversation, and I'm pleased that this is actually going to have quite an extensive community engagement, not just letters, but active engagement around it. Any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. That takes us to item 10.7, tender IE 99 of 2020, Beatty Park Leisure Centre Indoor Leisure Pool Filter Plant Replacement and Associated Works, appointment of successful tenderer.
Sorry, Mayor, I think we might have missed 10.4.
Oh, so sorry. Would you like to come back to that and do the tender, given I've started reading it out and it's very, very long? Is that okay with everyone? Okay. This is an absolute majority decision required, and we do have James Asset from Asset Management here if there are any questions. Mover, please. Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Gonchesi. Good on you. Councillor Loden.
Thank you, Mayor. I've reviewed this and the evaluation worksheet, and I am comfortable that the proposed tender represents best value for the city of Vincent. There is some aspects around the dollar values compared to the works that are being done, but I'm comfortable that those balances that we've done in that process have resulted in the best option.
Thank you, Councillor Loden. Councillor Gontaszewski does not feel the need to speak. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to put it. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you very much for being here, James. It's the best way to spend your Tuesday evenings around here. We all love it. He's just going off to order, says the CEO. Let's get that work underway. Okay, we'll go back to 10.4, which is the leadable laneway upgrade. This also requires an absolute majority decision, and Councillor Smith is leaving the chamber on this one with a proximity interest. Okay, can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Move Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded Councillor Castle. Thank you. Okay.
I'm supportive of the overall recommendation, but I will be looking to make amendments in relation to specifying a maximum of amount. So I will let the seconder speak.
Councillor Castle.
I'm happy to reserve until the amendments have been discussed.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, over to you, Councillor Gontaszewski.
Okay, might need a bit of wordsmithing. Oh, actually, no. I'm going to ask a question. Item 1.4 in this, now I need to get to it. Item 1.4 of the recommendation, it says that notes that the final negotiated contribution amount will be included in the mid-year budget review process for consideration by council. But then item 2 talks about approving the allocation of a specific amount of funds for this project within this year's financial annual budget. Can I just check if item 1.3 specified a maximum amount, and so therefore the negotiation wasn't going to go above that amount? Would item 1.4 still be necessary to be included in the recommendation?
And could I add further, is 1.3 necessary?
Through you, Mayor Cole, I can confirm that today I did speak to the senior partner at Hesperia to confirm what was being recommended to council in terms of that contribution of $155,808, and that was verbally agreed, and I put it to the senior partner that would be the city's maximum contribution. And on the basis of that conversation, I think there was an agreement there. It's not in writing, but it was made clear that if this was agreed by council, that would be the final amount.
That hasn't answered my question in relation to 1.4.
Through you, Mayor Cole. So I think because of those discussions we've had since the briefing and tonight's meeting that we could delete 1.4. I'm just looking for a nod from the manager.
And CEO, my question is also what's the purpose of 1.3?
Through you, Mayor Cole, on the basis of that discussion I've had with Hesperia today, that we could delete 1.3 and 1.4.
No, through you, Mayor Cole, concur with that. Yeah, they become redundant if we have an agreed maximum.
Perfect. Councillor Gontaszewski.
So just to clarify, so if we delete 1.3 and 1.4, number 2 is sufficient for...
the CEO is suggesting that 1.2 could say notes the administration's method of calculation for the city's total contribution instead of possible or maximum.
Yeah. That's fine. So can I put forward an amendment to item 1.2 to change the word possible to maximum and delete 1.3 and 1.4?
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Fotakis. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Fotakis, any comment? All those in favour? I declare that carried by all. We're back to the substantive. Any comments? Look, I know it's late. I just really quickly want to say I think this is an amazing opportunity to create a laneway of this nature and of this quality in Leederville. I think it's going to be fantastic. I love the fact that the brickwork based on our requirement is going to be the same as the Leederville Village Square, that we're going to have the overhead lighting, making the most of the fact that this is a narrow laneway and that there's going to be activation. It's going to make Leederville an even more exciting place to visit and wander. And that this type of laneway activation is something that we all love when we go overseas, and we're going to have it right here in Leederville. So it's a fantastic opportunity, and I very much agree with the way that Manager Craig Wilson has looked at the costings, and I appreciate you doing that. I think it's a much more fair and local government-y perspective in the best possible way. So thank you for that. Councillor Fotakis?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that further. I mean, I'm happy with the amount that we've arrived at. I mean, like you, Mayor, I think this is really quite an exciting juncture for Leederville. We're seeing the injection of an incredible number of new employees to the area, which I have no doubt will bring a lot more life and vigour to already vibrant area. And this particular sort of segment of Leederville, which has tended to be really at a back end. We've transformed an old car park, which now got a beautiful building there as well. But the attention to really getting some of those figures down, but also too to addressing sort of some of those contributions, elements such as the branding and the security, which are not, in my opinion, not appropriate for local government to contribute to. So I'm more than happy with the figure. It is substantial, but I believe it is sort of an investment rather than an expenditure that we will really recoup the benefits of in years to come.
Thank you, Councillor Fotakis. I'm going to put the item. All those in favour? Declare it carried. I can see Councillor Topwork does have his hand in the air. That was a bit of a bumper addition for infrastructure and environment. So well done to pump out those items at the end of the year, including as the long-awaited asset management and sustainability strategy. So well done to I&E. We're moving on to community and business services and item 11.3. If someone could just let Councillor Smith know she can come back and join us for more engaging debate. Oh, she's eating the chocolate. Okay, 11.3, advertising of amendment to community funding policy, student citizenship awards. This is something I'm living and breathing right now. And Councillor Gonchevsky's helping me. Councillor Gonchevsky's moving, seconded by Councillor Loden.
I have a question just in relation to the amounts referenced in the draft change to the policy. I have no issue with it going in here. And in fact, I think that's what I wanted. Just through you to the Executive Director of Community Business, it says that a total of up to 450 is provided to each school, with 300 being allocated to the school and 150 being gifted to each student. However, the previous paragraph talks about up to 3 students where there are 3 classes at a school. So I'm just wondering if the total should be 750, not 450, because if you have 300 being allocated to the school and 150 to each student, and there are 3 classes, so 3 students, I think that would be 750. Is that correct? She's nodding.
Through you, Mayor Cole, I totally agree with your math.
Excellent. My school math teacher would not have done that, but yes, I will not, nevertheless move an amendment once the seconder's had a chance to second.
Councillor Loden?
I don't have anything to add.
Can I just say, Councillor Gonchevsky, would you just entertain my commentary before moving an amendment? Because going through this process, I'm just wondering about the figures that we've set and just testing the room. I have a 12-year-old child, and currently a book voucher is given that's $91 and it's looking at going to $100. Just testing the fact that, I think my 12-year-old will be very happy with a $50 book voucher, for example. And also just in terms of the school donation, I do think it's a nice thing to do. I'm not entirely sure what the school does with it or what purpose it goes towards. But again, It is an opportunity to kind of consider, you know, is 300 the right amount? Could it potentially be 250? And one of the other things I just want to raise, a little bit awkward, but when I go to the awards, I just leave the bag with all of the goodies in it and I take the certificate up because I struggle to carry the amount of gifts that I'm taking to the podium. And some of the primary schools already give all of their students a medallion. And I have to be honest, it's of a nicer quality than the one that the city orders. I'm just being very frank. I give a medallion that has to be held, the box has to be held together in an elastic band because the box won't close, and it's not probably of a quality that would be treasured, to be quite frank. So I'm just wondering whether we need to give quality rather than quantity. And perhaps we need to liaise with schools where they're already giving medallions, whether they actually want probably a less specky medallion from us. Just some thoughts as I'm going through the process right now, just for discussion, if anyone cares to discuss this, or if you're all happy. It's not like a driving issue. It's nice to give a child a $100 book voucher and it's nice to give schools $300, but it's an opportunity. I'm not really capturing much vibe in the room. So, Councillor Hallett.
Well, we can test it through if there's a seconder for an amendment. I propose an amendment to delete the word medallion, comma, medallion from section 18 and change 150 to 50 and 450 to 300 and 300 to 250. If that maths worked.
I'm just going to check on that because I think the issue with the 300 being the total dollar value, if we move to 3 students, that's going to be 250 plus 150 for 3 book vouchers, which is 400. Yeah. Okay, so 400. So the amendment before you is to delete the medallion, to provide a $50 book voucher, to provide schools with a voucher check or a presentation of $250 and with a total value to each school, including vouchers and contribution of $400, allowing for 3 students. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Castle. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Hallett, or before I go to the seconder?
I'm just wondering if we could see it on the screen in the context so I can understand it. Is it possible to see section 18 on the screen? Or, this is the current one. 400. I don't want to overcomplicate this, but I would be in favour of a position where our total contribution to students was $150, whether that was one voucher of $150 to 1 student or 3 vouchers of $50 to 3 students, depending on the school's requirement.
Also, I'm just capturing here that the actual amount is 150 being gifted to each student. So at the moment, that's actually a combined figure, which would be $100 book voucher plus $50 towards the medallion, which costs $15, and the remainder must go towards the certificate. So I'm thinking that potentially the amendment, if we were going to do a $50 book voucher and a certificate, which could be of a higher quality framing, which would actually be nice, that would be a $100 gift to each student, which could then be book voucher 50 and a quality framed product. Sorry, I know that's late and it's the end of the year, but this is just my observations going through this process. So can I just put that to you, Councillor Hallett, because I think we've slightly missed, because the book voucher is contained with that. So the amendment would be a total of up to 400, with 250 being allocated to the school and 100 being gifted to each student in the form of a book voucher and certificate. And I think we could say, and framed certificate.
Isn't that 550 then?
So that's 550. How did it get more?
Because it was $300 too low before. Yeah, that was what my amendment was going to be. Just doing maths.
Okay, so it's now 500. That's 300 plus 250. So the total could be up to 550. Okay. All right. Shall we start this again? Shall we just vote that amendment down and start again? This is getting messy. Okay. All those in favour of that amendment? All those against? I declare it lost. Councillor Hallett? Or who's confident to get the figures right? 550, 250, 100.
Can I propose an amendment?
Thank you.
A total of up to 550 is provided to each school participating in the awards, with 250 being allocated to the school and $100 being gifted to each student in the form of a book voucher and certificate.
And framed certificate?
And framed certificate.
Okay. Okay. Is there a second? A seconded by Councillor Castle. Okay. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Hallett? Councillor Castle, you had some reservation?
No, I just have a question. Am I right in saying that there's only one high school that this applies to and the rest are all primary schools?
That's my understanding, Nicole.
And that it's only the primary schools that would request 3 awards be presented. Okay. I'm reluctant to try and change it. I do think it would be nice to make a distinction between the high school and the primary school, but you know.
Well, there's no distinction currently made, if that's any. And to be honest, at the one high school, they do get a lot of. They actually get extra medallions, and they will sort of almost get a dual prize for citizenship.
True, but as you said, for a 12-year-old, $50 vouchers, fantastic. For a 17-year-old, maybe not so much, but. I'm not going to die in a ditch on this, so happy to go ahead.
Or just for on the basis of providing additional information at Arranmore Senior College and at Arranmore Primary School, they do actually get a medallion from the school. So they would receive a quality medallion, a certificate, a book voucher, and a letter. And I often find that the citizenship winner will often get the Mercy Prize or a secondary prize. So I don't think you need to worry that they're not going to be lavished with gifts.
I take your point, and again, it's probably not the time to really go on about it, but it would be interesting to see how a $50 voucher compares to other awards given for other prizes at a high school graduation, because my understanding is that it would be very low if we're looking at how our citizenship award compares to other recognition that might be received.
Well, it's a good point. We can deal with this amendment, and then if you feel strongly, you can move a second amendment. So we're just dealing with the first amendment. Is there any further comments on this? I note that Councillor Wallace has given up and left the room. All right, I'm going to put this amendment. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Noting Councillor Wallace's, Wendy, just noting that Councillor Wallace wasn't in the room for the vote on the amendment. Okay, back to the substantive. Are there any further amendments? You sure? Okay, all right, I'm going to put the substantive. All those in favour? I declare it carried, noting that Councillor Wallace is not in the room for the vote. Okay. I do feel slightly mean, but it's just a bit of a tidy up, really. Okay. You missed the critical issue of the night, Councillor Wallace. Okay, so moving to 12.3, report and minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on the 1st of December 2020. It's traditionally moved by Councillor Toppenberg. Would you wish to move, Councillor Toppenberg? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Loden. Councillor Toppenberg, do you wish to speak to the Audit Committee?
No, I'm happy to support as recommended.
I'll just go to the seconder first. CEO, seconder? No, your CEO?
Through Mayor Cole, there was a question from the public gallery about why the audit log was listed as confidential for the minutes, and that did relate to some advice that we got from the Office of Auditor General on two of the recommendations from the IT performance audit. The audit committee meeting was deferred, and it was later than we had intended because of the delay in finalising the OAG external audit. We intend to make the audit log public in the future, but we just didn't get have enough time for this meeting to split the audit log into two. So that was not through any deliberate act of not wanting the non-confidential items to be made public, which we will do for the next meeting once we've sorted out a format for council to have a confidential list in the audit log and the majority which will be non-confidential.
Thank you, CEO, for that explanation. And just to also add that I was asked this question, or the city was asked this question by the local paper, the Perth Voice, and the CEO did provide a very similar response. I think it was you on that occasion. Yes, and it was around this particular issue about protecting the IT security. You do have to be careful, and that I think the response did also state that where there is an ability to release the audit log with language that's not sensitive, then that would also be explored so that we could regularly release that audit log.
Through Meko, yes, that's our intention as per past practice.
Thank you. Okay, any further comments? Okay, I'll put the audit minutes. All those in favour? Declare that carried. Next item is 12.4, Council Recess Period 2020-21, Delegated Authority to the Chief Executive Officer, absolute majority decision required. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Move Councillor Wallace, seconded Councillor Loden. Councillor Wallace. Councillor Loden, no comments. Any councillor? This is the same arrangement as each year that we have, no difference. Okay, I'll put it. All those in favour? Declare that carried. That leaves one remaining item, which is confidential item. So we'll have to ask for a mover and seconder to go behind closed doors to consider this item. Move Councillor Hallett, second Councillor Castle. All those in favour? Declare that carried.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Good evening. Just reporting back on the confidential item, 17.1 Mindarie Regional Council Strategy and Future Options. Council has adopted the following motion: that Council 1 endorses the Mindarie Regional Council's proposed course of action in respect of the future options for the resource recovery facility as detailed in the report, and 2, notes that the city's share of the cost to execute the proposed course of action as outlined in the report will be included in the city's 2021 to 2030 long-term financial plan and in the draft 2021 to 2022 annual budget. That being our final item for the evening, I'd now like to say Merry Christmas to you all, and to close the meeting, our last meeting for 2020, what a year it's been, at 9:03 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Something now we've stopped recording.
David wants to mention something.
Wendy, can you stop recording?